I want to talk a little Francis Ngannou now.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's coming back against Renan Ferreira.
Long-awaited debut, huh?
Yes, long-awaited PFL debut. You know the PFL, when they backed the Brinks truck up for Francis, we're hoping that this day would come. And not a lot of us really thought with 100% assurity that it would come, because we knew Francis was going to go and make a boatload of money in boxing, and whether or not he would want to come back and fight whoever was at the top of the heap in the PFL, who's likely not a household name. Renan Ferreira, no disrespect to him, is not a guy that the casual fans even know about.
Most people don't even know what the PFL is.
Right,
exactly.
exactly.
It can be UFC fans that watch every weekend, they don't know what the PFL is.
Exactly. And but this fight to me is a really interesting fight. It's a very challenging fight for Francis. Renan Ferreira made Francis look small at the press conference, which that's not an easy thing to do. There's very few people on planet Earth that can make Francis Ngannou look small.
Seriously.
But Ferreira is one of the guys that can do that. This guy's on a knockout tear. Made 21-second quick work of Ryan Bader. Now, I know Ryan Bader's a light heavyweight, and
long in the tooth.
We can get into all that, but this guy is pretty much knocking out everybody that's coming in front of him. So why is this fight interesting to me? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, Francis has been gone out of the MMA scene for quite some time.
Yeah.
However, Francis's best wins in MMA came with his hands.
Right.
So what's he been doing for the last 2 years? Improving his hands by way of boxing fights. So I expect Francis to come back a better striker than he ever was. He's not the guy that gets finished, that gets knocked out. He's lost a couple of times, but you had that dud with Derek Lewis, the Stipe Miocic fight, the first one. So Francis is not a guy who's going to go in there and get starched, but he is the guy who starches people. So, and neither is Ferreira. He's not the guy to get knocked out, but he knocks out everybody.
Right.
So you have these two unmovable forces, that are going to be colliding with each other. Here's the other thing, though, and I mentioned knockout, and I caveat that by saying MMA specifically. Francis got brutally finished by Anthony Joshua.
Right.
I know it's a different sport. I know it's a different thing. But when you walk around planet Earth with the confidence that Francis had when he left the UFC, nobody sits me down. Nobody, knocks me out. I knock everybody out. I'm the predator. I'm the scariest guy on the planet. And then you get starched by a guy like Anthony Joshua, who honestly made it look easy.
Yeah.
Do you come back with the same confidence? Because, yes, Renan Ferreira is not 1/10 the boxer AJ is.
Right.
But I bet you he can punch damn near as hard.
Yeah.
And so Francis in his mind is thinking, okay, like this guy, I've been knocked out now. It's not, I'm not this, godlike, unmovable force. Like I can be finished. I can be knocked out. Does that play with him psychologically? And then the third reason that I'm really interested to see this is, unfortunately for Francis, he lost his son.
Yeah.
And so he's fighting for Kobe, his son, his late son. And he said that this fight is dedicated to him. So I'm expecting to see Francis come out with the biggest chip on his shoulder that we've ever seen. And it'll be interesting to see if Renan Ferreira can really withstand the storm that is coming his way. But I want to break down the fight, want to talk about the fight. But if Francis wins, the conversation immediately is going to get inserted again. The three horsemen, Tom Aspinall, Francis Ngannou, John Jones. And the likelihood of those three people never fighting each other is probably more likely than not. And that's quite a sad proposition. But thoughts on the fight, and do you think those John Jones / Tom Aspinall conversations will resurface with a Francis win?
Well, you lay it all out very well. And I think Ferreira is a very skilled fighter that nobody really knows about yet. So that's always the most dangerous guy, because he's got nothing to lose. Francis Ngannou should go out there and he was the heavyweight world champion. He went out there and in everybody's eyes beat Tyson Fury, the #1 boxer in the world.
3-1 favorite in this fight.
Right. So everything was pointing in that direction. And I will say this real quickly. Once he fought Tyson Fury, I thought there wasn't a chance in hell we'd ever see Francis Ngannou do MMA again. Not just, I think the PFL was like, oh, damn, we lost him. We had this great fighter, the heavyweight world champion, the scariest guy in the world.
At least we got Jake Paul.
Yeah. That's why they signed Jake Paul afterwards. So I think that Francis Ngannou fighting Renan Ferreira is going to be an interesting thing, because if Francis comes out emotional, which he's not, he's got ice running through his veins. He can go over to the Middle East and put on a performance like he did against Tyson Fury and look so good. Obviously, the AJ fight didn't go well. AJ did his homework, figured out where the holes were in Francis Ngannou.
Took him seriously.
Took him seriously and completely exploited him. And that's why it feels like a fresh coat of paint for Francis to come back to MMA, because as soon as he lost to AJ, I go, oh, his next fight 100% will be in MMA. And I'm sure the PFL noticed that and realized that early. But you've got this 6'8" guy that not a lot of people know about. I'm sure he's a freak in his gym. He's the monster of all monsters. There's probably not that many people in all of Brazil that are tougher than him, if any.
If any. How do you get people to even spar with him? I mean, if you think about who he's sparring, they have to fly people in, I'm sure.
Right. We've got heavyweights in our gym, and the sparring partners that they bring in are few and far between, and they come from various parts of the world just to give you the looks you need. So I think this guy's probably similar to that. And this is one of those moments where PFL, yes, they might not be where the UFC is as far as an organization, a company, but they've got a really big name in Francis Ngannou. And a guy like Renan Ferreira, who now can build his name off of Francis Ngannou, you're going to be dealing with a very dangerous fighter. The heavyweight division in boxing throughout history, all the way to MMA, has always been the most sacred division. It's because no mistakes can be made. If you make a mistake, anybody in the heavyweight division can knock you out. And I think that's what makes heavyweight fights so intriguing. And just because on paper Francis should go out and beat this guy doesn't mean that's going to happen. This dude's 6'8", like you said. He towers over Francis. He's built like a bodybuilder. He's just a freak of nature.
Yeah. Also, very good jiu-jitsu, very good grappler as well.
Yeah, I don't imagine we'll see too much groundwork from him, but I think it's going to be a slugfest for the most part. But I think it's going to be a competitive fight. And if Francis is emotional and he doesn't fight the way he usually does, or if he stalls and freezes kind of like he did in the Derek Lewis fight, we could see him start to get taken over in these in the rounds, and now he's fighting from behind. That's an issue. I don't really see Francis coming in emotional. I don't really see, even though he lost his son, and that's probably the most tragic thing a human could possibly ever deal with, I don't think that's going to weigh on him while he's in the fight. I think he'll be able to devise a game plan, implement it, and then stick to it and potentially win. I've got him winning this fight.
Yeah,
but
me too.
There's a lot of variables and a lot of things could change. When you got a guy who's 6'8", who has to cut to the heavyweight limit, who is trying to make a name off you, become the face of the PFL, because that's exactly what would happen if he did. And then potentially, I'm going to throw a weird one out there for you. If Francis Ngannou loses to Renan Ferreira, and Renan Ferreira, I don't know what his fight contract with the PFL is. They're going to obviously want to keep him, and they're going to need to pay him really well. But I could see the UFC trying to poach him, trying to grab him and bring him over, and just as one more little shove to Francis Ngannou, if they could be like, all right, we're going to take the one and only guy that you had some sort of feud going with in the PFL, we're going to take him away. Now you've got no more roster to deal with. I could see something like that happening, but of course he's got to get through Francis and do it in spectacular fashion for that to be even on the table.
Yeah, the UFC will 100% go for Ferreira when his contract's up if he knocks out Francis Ngannou. And I say knock out because, I mean, what's the most likely way Renan Ferreira defeats Francis Ngannou?
Yeah,
I mean, probably either way this fight goes, it's going to be a knockout one way or the other. I don't see this going to judges' scorecards after 5 rounds. No. I think either Ferreira or Ngannou is going to find the shot that ends the night.
Right.
So look for Ferreira to come out like a bat out of hell to try to have the night and performance of his life.
Right.
Because, yes, he's in the PFL. I'm sure he's paid well. You know, you have the opportunity to win $1 million every year with the PFL. So there's certainly a lucrative, it's a lucrative proposition for those that are at the top of the heap in the PFL, but not nearly as lucrative as being at the top of heavyweight in the UFC.
No doubt.
Especially not right now.
Yeah.
Especially not while John Jones is there, especially not while Tom Aspinall is there. And don't expect John Jones to stick around for an unknown 6'8" monster who knocked out Francis Ngannou if that were to happen.
No chance that's happening.
Yeah, 0% chance that will happen. But, you know, he's going to be looking to make that statement. You know, I have not looked him up on Instagram to see how many followers he has compared to the top guys, John Jones, Stipe Miocic, Tom Aspinall in the UFC. But I would venture to say that he's got less than 10% of the followers that each one of those guys have.
Right.
Not nearly the name recognition, not nearly the sponsorship revenue and things of that nature. So how do you get that? You go out there and you knock out the guy who didn't lose his belt, who actually left the organization as the reigning champion.
Who over the past last couple of years has made millions and millions of dollars. And it's not true across the board, but a lot of times people like to go to that analogy. You can't wake up in silk sheets and then go run your 5 miles. You know, when people start to make the tens and 20s of millions of dollars, they start to weather a little bit in their discipline and their drive. So I don't think that's the case for Francis, but it could be. You know, we aren't with Francis every day. We don't see that. And if you've got a guy that's hungry, who's never been at the top, who's never had a marquee name like Francis Ngannou on his resume, he's going to be looking not only to beat him and make a statement, but to line his pockets as well and secure his future in the PFL.
Yeah, and this will really tell a lot, because we'll see, based on Francis's performance and the way he comes out, and we see how well conditioned or not conditioned he is. You know, how motivated he was for this fight, because I think he made somewhere between $50 and $75 million to fight Anthony Joshua.
Insane.
You know, and it's an absurd amount of money.
Right.
Suffice it to say, he's not making 5% of that in this PFL fight.
Right.
You know, he's making, you know, nothing compared to what he made to box Francis, or to box AJ and Tyson Fury.
Right.
So if he comes out and it's like the old Francis, then we know he's just motivated because he wants to fight again. He really is doing this for his son, and he's going to come out and give it 100% effort, even though it's a massive pay cut to the last two paydays that he's experienced. So I'm really excited about it. I will break this fight down because it is coming up in 2 months at a later date. But my early prediction is that Francis is going to get his hand raised.
Yeah.
I think there still is levels between the PFL and the UFC. And yes, there are people at the top of the PFL that could compete with people at the top of the UFC. But as far as depth goes, man, when you come up the heavyweight division, you knock out guys like Alistair Overeem, you defeat people like Stipe Miocic. I mean, Francis Ngannou is the real deal. He has faced nothing but real deal fighters his entire UFC career. And I think Renan Ferreira is very tough and is going to be one of his toughest opponents in recent memory. But all in all, I think Francis gets it done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Francis is going to go out there and probably win. And I can't wait to break this fight down, because after we do this and we got 2 months to get ready for this fight and prepare, I'm going to watch as much Ferreira footage as I can. I know he's an explosive fighter. I know he's pretty fast, even though he's such a big guy. So those types of variables can make for an interesting fight. Francis is a fast fighter, but he's not the world's fastest. Nobody's like, oh man, you got to look at Francis's speed. You got to look at his power. You got to look at the way he sets his shots up, his selection. Everything that he does is really impressive, but speed isn't one of the highest attributes that he has. He's a fast fighter, but not compared to some of the other guys. Certainly not compared to a Tom Aspinall. You know, those types of guys just move a little bit different. All in all, I can't wait for it. But yeah, we got a couple of months to do a little bit more homework on Ferreira, see exactly what we're going to see, and then make a better prediction or a more educated prediction.
Yeah, we'll go deep into that one.
Can't wait.